They are the fastest, the largest, and the most dangerous in the world.
This is a very challenging thing to bring out a new ship like this.
But it is much more than a challenge.
It's absolutely a privilege to be here and do this.
Their design goes beyond the scope of what is technically possible, setting new standards. These vehicles are milestones of engineering.
This is the father of air travel.
On land, on water, and in the air, all of them are ultimate vehicles. In this episode, a gigantic swimming parking lot, the world's largest car carrier. Once, this was the fastest and most expensive private yacht at sea. 90 years later, it still holds records. Also in this episode, the largest container ship on Earth on its maiden voyage. Some call it the Concorde of the Seas. This catamaran holds the title of fastest commercial ship in the world. And finally, a state-of-the-art submarine on a secret mission, a nearly silent spy. It is the largest container ship in the world, the OOCL Hong Kong, a gigantic high-tech freighter made for international trade. One of the most fascinating, but also one of the most dangerous workplaces afloat.
At sea, no one can help you.
The freighter's risky mission, a delivery to the other side of the world, in only about 35 days, and each hour of delay costs a fortune. At 400 meters, the OOCL Hong Kong is longer than an aircraft carrier. She can hold more than 21,413 standard containers, more than any other container ship in the world. Koche, a seaport in South Korea. Here begins the maiden voyage, a risky ordeal for the swimming giant. It is designed for a carrying capacity of 191,000 tons. But so far, that is pure theory. Now we'll see if the ship can actually carry the enormous cargo and transport it in the short time frame. For Captain Lam Chung Fat, this voyage is the highlight of his career and the ultimate test of his abilities.
I'm glad they called me because this is a very challenging thing to bring out a new ship like this. And yeah, I mean, everything is new on the ship and I have to set up the whole ship. So it's actually quite challenging.
Massive responsibility also weighs on another crew member. Deep in the ship's belly, Levi Chi makes sure that the ship will reach its objective in the time allowed. The chief engineer operates one of the largest engines in the world. But that Levi Chi ended up here was one big misunderstanding.
When I was young, I saw a movie called Love Boat. I said, wow, this man very happy with all the girls drinking and bar, not working. So I decided to be a seaman. And then I found out, container ship, no, you don't have all the bar, beer, party every day.
Instead, reality strikes. An extremely dangerous workplace, responsibility for a 2,200-ton engine, and enormous time pressure. The transport business is highly competitive. It is dominated by the shipping company that can transport the most containers for the lowest price and in the shortest time. The OOCL Hong Kong may be able to load more containers than any other ship, but on its maiden voyage, the mega freighter must prove that it can stick to the strict timetable. Only then will it be profitable. In Shanghai, the world's largest container port, the ship loads its first cargo ever. It can transport a total of 191,000 tons, corresponding to the weight of 336 A380 airplanes. Now we'll see how the ship fares under such a gigantic load. Till now, there has only ever been a computer simulation. For the crew, the coming days at sea will become their greatest challenge. The same time in South Korea, at Samsung Heavy Industries in Koche. It is the most sought-after shipyard in the world and as big as a small town. Over 35,000 people build 30 swimming giants each year, including 6 of the new premium class of ships, at a price tag of $950 million US. For engineers and shipbuilders in particular, the new mega container ships pose a tremendous challenge: more power with lower fuel consumption. All with one goal in mind: the lowest transport price per container. One man oversaw the entire process of building the new high-tech ship. The project leader, Kim Yong-ha.
This ship is full of intelligent technology, which makes it environmentally friendly and saves energy. For me, it's not only a huge cargo ship, but the best in the world.
The OOCL Hong Kong is not substantially longer or wider than other container ships. Nevertheless, it can transport many more containers. In comparison to other megaships of the same size, the OOCL Hong Kong carries an additional story of containers. The secret lies in the ship's design. Its structure contains less steel than that of all other container ships, and so, the lower the tar weight, the more space for cargo. Precisely this relationship of tar weight to gross weight makes it the most efficient container ship in the world.
A battle of giants reigns in the cargo industry. The cargo could also be divided over 2 ships. So, with a load of 21,000 containers, one ship could take 13,000 and another one 8,000. Some shipping companies do it like that. We can transport everything with one ship. We only need half the crew. We save ferry costs and time. So, this ship lets a transport company earn higher profits.
But how will the system fare on the high seas? The shipping company's new flagship, the OOCL Hong Kong, is loaded and on the way to Singapore, its first destination port. The crew must check and secure the cargo many times a day, especially the hazardous material and freezer containers. What looks like a smooth ride above water requires maximum concentration below. The engine room, a cathedral of engineering. The engine block is 9 stories high. Its tremendous power shakes the whole room, comparable to a small earthquake. The room's temperature is between 40 and 50 degrees Celsius. The metal is so hot that it can cause severe burns. Every day, Li Wai-chi points out the dangers of the job to his team.
Safety is the top priority. You got all your safety gears ready, is it? All your safety helmet, chip band, and everything is ready, is it? And in good order. And in engine room, when you sit here, no problem. When you go out, you must put the sleeve down because everything is hot. And don't touch any engine. No question? 有没有问题? 有没有问题? 没有问题? Okay, move. Excellent.
Routine or the slightest carelessness, both can be fatal.
At sea, no one can help you, except, I think of someone. God may help you, but sometimes he forget.
Chief Engineer Li Wai-chi keeps an eye on one part of the engine in particular, the propeller, and the propeller shaft connected to it. The problem, with a heavy cargo, the shaft is very sensitive to movements. Sharp changes in course, such as tight turns, can cause the shaft to rub against its casing, and in the worst case, start a fire. If the temperature exceeds a critical point, the chief engineer tells the captain to adjust the course, and thus ease the pressure on the shaft. But today, everything is running smoothly, and the ship maintains its course. Should the shaft ever spark a fire, this would be an enormous danger. In no time, the fire could spread to the entire ship. For this eventuality, nearly 800 CO2 bottles are on board. In an emergency, Li Wai-chi could flood the engine room from here with carbon dioxide and thus extinguish the fire.
I never used this before. It's luck. I think not many seamen have to use this system because this is the CO2 for the engine room. If we're going to put the CO2 to put out the fire, that's the last resort.
The bulk of the distance to the port of Singapore lies behind the crew. Li Wai-chi has performed his task. He has kept one of the world's largest and most powerful diesel engines under control. The first test run of the maiden voyage was a success. In the future, the OOCL Hong Kong will shuttle permanently between Asia and Europe, from China over Singapore through the Suez Canal, all the way to England, the Netherlands, Poland and Germany, a course to the other end of the world in a mere 35 days. Captain Lam Chung Fat will stay with the flagship. A total of 6 of these giants link the world's markets, delivering fresh supplies for our consumption. Other giants of the seas operate more covertly. One of our ultimate vehicles, the world's most modern submarine. And a ferry with an aircraft engine at heart, faster than every other commercial vessel. Gigantic container ships have become the symbol of the globalized world. But they are not the only mega freighters on the 7 seas. The Höegh Traveller, the world's largest car carrier. If all the automobiles that fit in its belly were lined up end to end, they would stretch for 40 kilometers, twice as long as Manhattan. Today's goal, loading the ship in 12 hours. The Traveller's maiden voyage was in September 2016. There is room for up to 8,500 vehicles on its 14 decks, even for heavyweights of up to 375 tons. Germany, Bremerhaven. Germany, the world's leading exporter, ships 3.5 million new vehicles a year from here. Car carriers transport the cars around the globe. The largest, the Traveller, and its structurally identical sister ships. 6 a.m. Port Captain Kjell Arne Berger is responsible for loading up to 8,500 vehicles. He discusses final changes. All the cars must go to the right place. The eye of the needle is the ship's ramp.
The worst thing that can happen is that we have a breakdown with a big machine on the ramp, as you see out here, because then traffic in and out is stopping.
Once the ramp has been crossed, the cars are distributed over a cargo area of 71,400 square meters, the equivalent of 10 soccer fields. The Traveller can accommodate 30% more vehicles than an average car carrier. But it's not only designed for cars, but also for heavy-duty transporters. The ship's ramp can bear an entire 375 tons. And the doorway, at 12 meters wide, can handle the very biggest monster vehicles. The same goes for the decks. 5 are height adjustable. Thus, there is space for vehicles up to 6.5 meters high. With a total of over 100,000 parking spaces, it is Europe's largest parking lot. Cars, pickup trucks, and heavy-duty transporters, all are waiting to be shipped. A scanner system registers all the automobiles that arrive in Bremerhaven. Shunt drivers collect the new vehicles from the lots and drive them on deck. Guides coordinate the parking. An important detail, the cars must be positioned so that the ship's balance is maintained. Parking is not the end of the job. Securing straps keep the vehicles from colliding with one another during storms on the open sea. Along its route, the car freighter constantly picks up new vehicles and unloads others. A logistical masterpiece. Time and again, vehicles must be relocated within the ship to keep the balance right. The adjustable ramps are an enormous help, an advantage of the modern ship.
It's much more flexible than older ones, so as far as you get to know all its varieties, that you can lift the panels and liftable decks, it's more easy.
This completely new class of ship was designed and built in the Chinese port city of Xiamen. Engineer Jan Rune Merkin is the head of new building at the shipping company Höegh Autoliners. His assignment with the Traveller: to construct the most economical and simultaneously the most ecologically friendly car carrier in the world. Size makes both possible.
We had to keep the vessel within a certain limit of length, which was less than 200 meters. And within those 200 meters, this 8,500 unit was the maximum that we could get out of that.
A berth is 200 meters long. For every additional meter, a second berth must be paid for. Yet the true engineering challenge was keeping the deck heights adjustable.
Liftable decks is a challenge because in particular for this ship, which have 5 of them, and one on top of the other.
The great challenge: the decks must be light enough to be lifted. At the same time, they must also be sturdy enough to support large, heavyweight vehicles. After only 2.5 years, the first ship of the new class left the shipyard, sent off with a loud blast.
You know, it's a great moment when a ship is completed and when the ship is leaving the shipyard. A usual procedure is that when they leave, they will use the air horn. And it's just like the air horn is saying goodbye, thank you, now I'm on my own.
Loading in Bremerhaven. The ramp can even take monsters like this vehicle. So big that trucks look like toy cars in comparison. A vehicle of this kind can weigh as much as 100 cars. But even this colossus is held only by securing straps. All in all, the ship transports vehicles with a total weight of up to 20,500 tons. Tractors, buses, trucks, diggers, and other construction vehicles fit into the ship's belly. Late afternoon, shortly before the end of the shift, an especially tall excavator must be loaded. It clears the stern opening easily. But then comes the interior ramp. Things get tight. And then the operation team notices that it will not fit through.
The deck was high enough for the unit, but the units are higher than in the bookings.
An incorrectly recorded height, and now time is running. The port captain and his team must first tow the excavator away and then find a new parking space for it.
We can easily go into overtime if this happens and stay too long.
Kjell Arne Berger rolls up his sleeves. The solution: the excavator will go on the main deck. That way there is no interior ramp to cause problems. The main deck is still too low, but thanks to the adjustable levels, 4 meters 80 centimeters quickly becomes 6.5 meters. Thus, there is room for the excavator too. After nearly 12 hours of work, the job is done. All the vehicles are on board. The port captain receives a final manifest. His job done for today.
No, I'm just happy that we finished and everything went quite smooth. We had some small problems with a unit that was a little bit too high, but totally over 600 units loaded and everything went smooth.
And tomorrow, this gigantic car carrier will already arrive at the next port. Other than size, it is above all speed that excites engineers. The fastest commercial ship in the world is this high-speed catamaran, a true ultimate vehicle. Few freighters make it to 30 years. Only cruise ships are broken up sooner. The oldest cruise ship in the world, however, is already almost a century old. She is one of the last of her kind, and despite her age, still one of the biggest and fastest sailing ships of her class.
This ship, it is like a living creature. Sometimes she is capricious, you know, like all ladies.
Commissioned by an American millionaire, the Sea Cloud was at the time the most expensive private yacht in the world. Today, she is a luxury cruise ship with capacity for 60 passengers. In 1931, the Sea Cloud was launched under the name Hussar, around 110 meters long, outfitted with 30 sails. Then as now, she is absolutely uncomparable. The Caribbean, Trinidad-Tobago, Man-O-War Bay. The Sea Cloud lies at anchor in the bay of the tropical island. Today's destination, the island of Grenada, about 100 kilometers away. The Russian Vladimir Pushkarev has guided the ship across the seven seas since 2009, and with 1931 technology.
We don't have a pitch control of propellers. We use an old telegraph, old way of maneuvering. So, kind of classic, old school.
And what's more, the entire hull and a large part of the superstructure are still original to the 1930s. Sometimes the technology goes haywire, like the capstan right now.
Modern ships, they have hydraulic winches, they have hydraulic brakes, and you know, all push-button controls over there. Over here, you could see in all, you know, brutal way using muscles.
After some loving maintenance, the winch works again, and the Sea Cloud can finally set off.
Okay, anchor home.
Although the Sea Cloud is a sailing ship, it uses engine power to reach the open sea. The winds in the bay are simply too weak.
300, please.
300. 2 ahead slow.
The signal goes from the bridge right to the engine room. Here the steerage is also the same as nearly 90 years ago. Only the two 772 kilowatt diesel engines are new. They can bring the Sea Cloud to a speed of up to 10.5 knots. The Sea Cloud is an early forerunner of today's hybrid vessels. In 1931, it already had 4 diesel generators on board. They produced the electricity that, through 2 electric engines, powered the 2 propellers. The rigging of the 4 masts was also designed for speed. To achieve a low center of gravity and stability, the masts and rig are made of steel below and wood above. The combination of modern engine drive and sails made the Sea Cloud the fastest ship of its day. Today, the crew consists of about 60 people, the same as the number of guests. 4 to set 30 sails, plenty of manpower is needed.
We are bracing opposite tack. Call crew, stand by.
Roger, opposite bracing.
Everything here is done with pure muscle power. The only small bit of help comes from electric winches, which help to turn the yards into the wind. It takes more than an hour to set the sails on the 4 masts. They give the Sea Cloud an impressive total of 3,000 square meters of sail area. The sails must be changed every 5 to 7 years. Gdansk, Poland, is home to one of the largest sail makers in Europe. The workers here make the sails for the Sea Cloud by hand, as large as 200 square meters and weighing up to 100 kilograms. Captain Adam Pascho was previously the Sea Cloud's first officer, and today he is responsible for its maintenance. No one knows the ship as well as he.
In the 1930s, this was the biggest, the best yacht, private yacht you can build. Everything what you can get on the market in those days was placed on the yacht. The best whatever you can build in the world.
No wonder. Its owners, the stockbroker Edward F. Hutton and his wife Marjorie Merriweather Post, were among the richest Americans of the period. From 1942 to 1944, the United States Navy used the ship as a Coast Guard cutter. For this purpose, the masts and luxury furniture were removed and put in storage. After the war, the ship was returned to its original state. In the following years, it often changed owners and names until, at the end of the 1970s, it was ultimately brought to Germany and converted into a cruise ship. In addition to new sails, a great deal of other restoration was necessary. It was a difficult balancing act, as Captain Adam Pascho knows.
The biggest challenge is to keep her character, to do repairs but not to change the ship, and to get the material for the ship, and of course to do restoration of the luxus area.
The 10 original cabins, such as this one, which belonged to the millionaire's wife, have been preserved intact. Where cruise ship guests stay today, heads of state, Hollywood stars and captains of industry slept nearly 90 years ago.
The future of the Sea Cloud is quite clear. I would say as long as we can keep her safety standard on the highest level, and as long as we can keep her maintained to provide this safety environment for the passengers, for the crew, that she can be seaworthy, that long she's supposed to sail.
Meanwhile, in the Caribbean, the Sea Cloud has nearly reached her destination. But the real challenge is about to come.
We have to go inside of the old harbor, St. George's Old Harbor. There are shallows all over here, 5 meters, 6 meters shallow waters. This is the size of the ship. That's how we will go, and then approach, then stop, then turn. Yeah, no, of course, the challenge, do not hit the dock.
To this end, the crew must gather the sails. Only then can the Sea Cloud be maneuvered into the narrow harbor. The harbor pilot comes aboard to help. For the Sea Cloud is actually much too big for the small harbor. The channel is only a bit wider than the ship. The mood is tense. A few meters too far to the right or left, and the Sea Cloud will run aground in the shallow harbor.
All stop! Two back slow!
After nearly an hour, the job is done. Vladimir Pushkarev is relieved.
It's a nice ship. It's really something. I feel myself privileged to sail on this ship and to be a captain. It's a dream.
And in only a few hours, the Sea Cloud will depart for its next destination. Similar to a sailing ship, this ultimate vehicle also slides by almost silently. Later in this episode, the most modern submarine in the world. From the erstwhile fastest sailing ship in the world to the current water speed record holder. The next spectacular ship is a true pioneer of modern seafaring. Aircraft turbines turn this large catamaran into a true speedboat.
My job is unique. Perhaps it's like that of a Formula One driver.
We're talking about the fastest commercial passenger ship in the world, the HSC Francisco. She accommodates 150 cars and just over 1,000 passengers, and still reaches record speeds. That means 58 knots, or 107 kilometers per hour. Only small speedboats are faster. Argentina, Buenos Aires. Puerto Madero, Argentina's biggest port, indeed one of the biggest in Latin America, and home to the world's fastest passenger ship, the HSC Francisco. The hull, a 100-meter-long catamaran constructed of light aluminium. The ship is a masterpiece combining all the tested technologies of speedboat building. 2 aircraft turbines supply enormous power. Fully loaded, the ship can still reach a high speed of 52 knots. A total of 3 decks provide space for engines, cargo, passengers, and crew. Every day, the ferry shuttles twice between Buenos Aires in Argentina and Montevideo in Uruguay. The first ship leaves the Argentine capital at daybreak. Boarding, loading, and engine check take place simultaneously in only 1 hour. The most important man on board, Captain Nico Strasser. He has been guiding the ferry between the Latin American capitals for 3 years. His job is more than mere work to him.
I feel very good. Being captain is a great satisfaction. This ship's technology is different from others. It's brand new.
The crew carries out the engine check with the onboard computer. Each tiny sensor can be monitored and controlled from here.
The ship is technologically complex, especially the gas turbine drive. Small problems always crop up.
The trickiest moment, refueling. The HSC Francisco's main fuel is liquefied natural gas. She is the first ferry in the world with natural gas propulsion. While the crew refuels, no electronic devices may be nearby. There is a great danger of explosion. 10 minutes before the high-speed ferry departs, the captain gives the signal to start the engines. The turbines need this long to reach their full power. The crossing to Montevideo, Uruguay, 190 kilometers away, lasts 2 hours and 15 minutes. Across from the HSC Francisco's berth, a fleet of maintenance engineers works. Among them, Gerardo Babini. He was part of the building team in Tasmania and knows the ship better than just about anyone.
The secret of this ship is the relationship between its power and weight. The Francisco has 2 22-megawatt turbines, and that's how the ship reaches such high speed. So, the turbines have an advantage. They have a lot of power for such a light vessel. Like with airplanes. They are aircraft turbines, after all.
The ferry's enormous propulsion power comes from 2 modified gas turbines, which also power much larger ships like the Queen Mary 2. Each of the catamaran's hulls has an engine and machine room. The special feature, the turbines were developed to burn liquefied natural gas and marine diesel. However, liquefied natural gas is the ship's chief fuel. The turbines, which each generate 22 megawatts of power, drive an impeller transmission. It, in turn, creates a water stream and drives the water jets. The HSC Francisco, a tour de force of shipbuilding. The greatest challenge for the engineers was not during construction, however.
Getting from Tasmania to Rio de la Plata was so hard. The fuel tank capacity was too small for the Pacific crossing. So, we stowed 8 additional balloons with 25,000 liters of diesel in the cargo hold. That's how we made it across the Pacific. Very difficult.
Difficult because the catamaran is built for shallow water with few waves, not for a journey across the 7 seas. Meanwhile, the turbines have warmed up. The voyage from Argentina to Uruguay along the La Plata River can begin. The turbines bring the ship to a speed of over 50 knots, gulping down a hefty amount of fuel in the process. But since the ship is powered by natural gas, the high-speed catamaran is also one of the world's most ecologically friendly ferry.
The biggest risks are launch and landfall, like in an airplane.
The passenger ship is named for the Argentine Pope Francis. Guests travel comfortably in 3 different classes. And they have the opportunity to shop in the largest duty-free store ever built on a ferry. Tickets for the trip to Montevideo start at $100. The passenger ship takes a good 2 hours to travel to Montevideo.
Hello, this is Francisco. We're arriving in the harbor.
Captain Nico Strasser turns off the autopilot and guides the ferry manually into the harbor, using only 5% of the ship's total power. The maneuver requires the entire crew's absolute concentration. The smallest steering error can result in a harrowing accident.
The greatest danger is ramming the harbor wall. That's why we go at the lowest speed possible. Captains must complete a 3-month training course here to master the landing maneuver. Ultimately, experience brings a sense of security.
The ship did ram the wall in Montevideo once. That totally destroyed the catamaran's front blade. Today, the captain guides the ship safely into the harbor.
Very well. That's finished. Sometimes it's like very stressful when it's really windy and dangerous, and then you're like, okay, we do it. But no, normally it's just routine.
In Montevideo, a smooth transfer takes place. While the passengers and Captain Nico Strasser leave the ship, the next crew prepares for the return journey with a high-speed catamaran. With a jet engine, one hardly goes unnoticed. Our next ultimate vehicle, however, wanders the seas almost without a sound. This ultimate vehicle is dangerous and fast. The U-212A, one of the world's most modern submarines, and the first with fuel cell propulsion, designed for the silent and invisible defense of home waters. The first submarine of this class was put into service in autumn 2005. It can reach a speed of almost 20 knots, travel 8,000 nautical miles without interruption, and stay underwater for over 2 weeks. A record for a non-nuclear submarine. Taranto, the home port of the Italian submarine fleet. The SSK Todaro is one of the 4 212A class subs Italy has. At 56 meters long and 11.5 meters high, it is considerably smaller than a nuclear submarine. In return, it is more versatile, for example, in shallow coastal waters. Its sail is one of the shortest in the world, making the sub extremely streamlined and fast. Like the rest of the outer hull, it is made of fiberglass reinforced plastic, a material difficult for sonar to locate. Tomorrow, the submarine is scheduled to depart on a training mission. Captain Giorgio Marini Bettolo coordinates the preparations.
Tomorrow we will leave for a 30 days mission. It will be an intelligence mission, and the Todaro, the boat of the 212 class, is the perfect submarine to do this kind of mission.
As opposed to its predecessors, this submarine has 2 decks. The upper contains the operations center and the sleeping quarters for the 32-man crew. The lower deck contains the entire propulsion unit and 6 torpedo tubes. Chief Engineer Fabio Nicoletti is checking the fuel cell. It needs no external air, it generates no fumes, hardly any heat, and above all, no noise. Thus, it enables a long and nearly invisible deployment.
The first thing I thought when I heard about the possibility of the fuel cells on board of Italian submarines was that we could at least become as powerful as nuclear submarines and becoming air independent. And this allows us to say to be a very strong and efficient asset at sea to do our missions.
The energy from the fuel cell flows into a battery, which in turn powers an electric engine, which drives the propeller. But there is a diesel engine on board too, used for surface cruising.
I will open this door. We need to protect our ears because now the sounds get higher.
That the deafening noise in the engine room cannot be heard outside is thanks to a unique design adopted for the 212A class. The diesel generator and other loud components and machines are arranged in a kind of capsule made of super sound-absorbing material, which is slid into the hull as one unit. In addition, this capsule is resiliently mounted in the submarine's hull, such that no vibrations are transmitted to the outer hull. Because the less noise a submarine projects on the outside, the more invisible it is. The 212A class was developed in the German Howaldtswerken, today ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems. Here, each submarine is crafted by hand. Build time over 6 years. Peter Hausschild is a shipbuilder and collaborated on developing the U212A.
The 212 class was a real technical challenge, as it used many technologies for the first time. For example, we made use of very large-scale fuel cells that perhaps had not been serially produced since the Apollo program.
The history of German submarine building began in 1850, when Wilhelm Bauer constructed the Brandtaucher, one of the world's first submarines. A good 60 years later, there were already 141 submarines in the Imperial German Navy. Over time, the submarines got bigger, faster, and could dive ever deeper and longer. With the 212A class, the first of which was put into service in 2005, Germany developed one of the world's most modern submarines, a development that attracted attention worldwide.
The US Navy was very eager to test the subs and see if it could find them. So subs from the Italian and German navies went to the US to perform maneuvers, and the Americans had great difficulties finding them.
6 submarines of the 212A class are operated by the German Navy, whereas 4 have been sold to Italy. Taranto, early morning. The 32-man crew gets ready for its 30-day mission.
We are ready for our mission.
While the last crew members stow their gear on board, the operations center prepares for departure. And then it's time. The SSK Todaro launches. submarines of the 212A class have two cutting-edge periscopes with a thermographic camera, laser rangefinder, GPS antenna, and night vision capability. The crew will check systems such as steering and sonar on a dive near the harbor. For during the maneuver, at a depth of 200 to 400 meters, everything must work perfectly. After the last hatch is closed, Captain Bertolo gives the command to dive.
Immersione. Timoniere governa per quota 14.
Quota 14. Immersione. Timoniere governa con massimo 3 gradi approvamento. Apre allagamenti. Apre allagamenti. Apri 1. Apro 1. 2 aperti. Apri 5. Apro 5.
First, the submarine dives to periscope depth, just under the water's surface. To this end, the engineers slowly flood the 5 ballast tanks. 150,000 liters of water rush into the tanks and press the sub underwater.
Timoniere quota 40.
Quota 40.
Using the X-rudder at the stern and the fair water planes on the sail, the helmsman takes the submarine down. How deep a submarine can dive is a well-kept secret. The U-212A class is supposed to be able to dive to more than 400 meters. For this test, the submarine will now dive to a depth of only 40 meters. The crew begins with the tests right away.
We will do a safety check from the different stations.
Next to fire, the greatest enemy of a submarine is water. The crew checks every spot where water could theoretically get in.
Ronda eseguita in tutti I locali con esito regolare.
Then the 6 sonar systems are checked. They are the submarine's underwater eyes and ears.
This very modern sonar allows us also to capture noise at very high distance and in many cases also at more than 100 kilometers. So it's a huge distance and this gives us a huge advantage in the operations.
The sonar systems are also very accurate. The sonar engineers not only hear whether a military, container or cruise ship is in the area, but often they can even pinpoint exactly which ship it is. After a good hour, all the tests are complete and the SSK Todaro prepares to surface again. To this end, the helmsman uses the rudders to rise to just under the water level. Captain Giorgio Marini Bertolo looks through the periscope to see whether it is safe to surface and no other boat is in the way. He can see up to 20 kilometers with the periscope.
Direttore, emersione. Alza 15.
Timoniere governa con massimo 3 gradi appoppamento. 3 gradi appoppamento. Apre allagamenti.
To rise, compressed air is blown into the ballast tanks, thus pressing the water out. This process lasts about a minute. In an emergency, though, the submarine could surface from a depth of several hundred meters within 30 seconds.
We are ready for our mission and we are looking forward to start it. And we are really lucky to start our mission on this kind of submarine, which is a really powerful asset.
Many ships travel the 7 seas, but only a few are as fascinating as these ultimate vehicles.